Our hero opens his eyes in a strange land, somewhere where he's never been before. He looks around and it looks like he's somewhere near a lake. He wonders why the hell, how'd he even get here? Dude remembers as he was going on a hillside highway and he noticed a vending machine toppling off of a moving truck. Don't tell me he died by the vending machine. While trying to save the vending machine. Why are you trying to save a vending machine? Most anime people try to save little kids. But nope, our hero jumped off a cliff trying to save a fracking vending machine and he died. He was sure that he had died, but he's actually here, alive. However, there's something wrong with him as he tries to move his body because it just won't move. And as for his voice, it sounds strangely robotic. All he can say is some strange little pre-installed voices like, "Hello there," or "Thank you so much," just like a machine. Now for a normal man, this would have been strange, but our hero recognizes the voice because he's a vending machine fanatic. But nevertheless, he could never be mistaken. This was the voice of a vending machine, and it was coming out of him. Vending machines are his passion, so much so that he's researched about them a lot. And ironically, he himself is now a vending machine. That's right, folks. Life complete. Or I guess in this case, multiple lives complete. And now that he's a vending machine, he's got to figure out, he's got to learn about his body, right? At first, he tries out all sorts of things. Well, I'm making it sound like this. He tries out all the voice messages that he has and gets to know that he has like 6 or 7 things that he can say. After that, he decides to check the items that he, as a vending machine, sells, and currently he's selling corn soup and drinking mineral water. There seems to be some AI assistance or something inside his head that tells him about himself. Apparently, he has a lot of items that he can sell for real money in return, for which he gets points. These points can be either used to get even more stuff or add new kinds of stuff into the vending machine so that he can attract a lot more customers. Not only that, using the points allow him to keep all of his food warm or even cook a cup of ramen for his customers. It allows him to do tons of stuff. Our hero decides to test his functions a little bit, and using 10 points, he changes some of the mineral water and replaces it with cold milk tea. He also notices that he's not powered by electricity, which means that he's allowed to move anywhere if he can. Instead of electricity, he's powered by points, so each hour he loses 1 point, and he must gain back those points by selling his items. For now, he has 900 points though, so it's good to spend some of those coins on some of these functions. The only problem is he's in the middle of bum rush frackin' nowhere, and there's a very low chance of customers in a place where literally nobody exists. One whole day passes by, and there's still no customer for our hero, and he starts worrying for himself. If a few more weeks go by without anyone, he's probably gonna die. But then suddenly a massive frog man leaps out of the lake. It seems like a monster, but yet our hero decides to test his luck and calls out to the customer. Of course, he can only say hello there, but it grabs the frog's attention nonetheless, and the only issue is that the monster decides to attack the machine instead of paying him. The frog starts striking the vending machine, and each time he does so, our hero hears the AI remind him that he's losing his durability. Thanks for fracking nothing. He wonders what'll happen if he loses all his durability, and the AI tells him that he'll die. Our hero then decides to check up on his stats and realizes that he has no good stats at all. The hero then starts to panic. He has no way he can stop this frog from attacking him, and one hit from the frog's clubs is making him lose 2 out of his 100 durability points. This goes on for like 2 minutes. He's gonna die. Oh, think your math adds up? He starts scoring through his functions to see if there's something that could help him, but before he knows it, there's 3 more of those frog monsters that appear from the lake, and all of them start attacking him. What do these frogs have like damage against this vending machine for? What is it doing? One of them even has a frackin' axe, which is much more powerful than a club, and it'll probably deal much more damage to him. In his moment of panic, he notices a function called blessing. His AI tells him that it's the many blessings that he got from the gods that can be used in this world. Although most of these blessings are not at all suited for a vending machine, our hero eventually notices a blessing called a barrier. The AI explains that this allows him to create a barrier. Congratulations, Sherlock. Not only that, it even allows him to choose who can enter and exit this barrier. That would have been amazing to know like literally a minute prior, but it's perfect for a hero who, after losing so many hit points, finally manages to save himself by using his fracking eyes and creating a massive barrier. The frog monsters don't give up though, and only return back to their lake late at night. During the entire battle, not only does our hero lose a lot of durability points, but in order to recover himself to his original shape, he has to lose a lot of his points as well, bringing him down to just 300. The next day, however, he finally comes across a human. A pretty young blonde girl approaches him after hearing a sound coming from his direction. Their direction. She seems hungry, tired, and famished all at once, and is calling out for some food. Apparently, she'd been abandoned by her friends, and she also lost a lot of the food bag that she had, so she's in quite a pickle. Our hero calls out to her, and she wonders what strange vending machine this is. She believes that this is probably a magical machine that can talk. Inside the vending machine, she notices some water, milk tea, and corn soup. Our hero asks her to insert a coin. Since it's their only way to get any food, the blonde girl inserts 1 copper coin into our hero, and that sounds terrible. At first it doesn't work, but the AI assistant tells our hero that he needs to install a coin conversion system for 100 points. Now that
that he finally has a customer, our hero decides that it's worth it to use a coin converting system so that he can spend another 100 points to get that. A strange light shines from the machine, and the blonde girl is now able to see all the prices of the vending machine on her local currency called Owa. She exclaims that the items inside the vending machine are actually quite expensive, but she has no choice but to buy them. She starts buying all sorts of items from the vending machine, and by the end of the day, she's already spent 3 silver coins and a bunch of copper ones, giving our hero tons of points to survive once more. That night, the poor hungry girl falls asleep right next to our hero in his protective barrier. Aw, kind of wholesome. The next day arrives soon enough, and the two of them finally introduce themselves with each other. Well, actually, the blonde frackin' introduced herself. The machine can't talk. She knows that the machine is kind of sentient and develops a bit of a bond with it. She explains that her name is Lemus, and she was a bounty hunter. She came all the way to the lake to hunt some frog demons, but none of her punches landed, so she was stranded, left alone with her friends, abandoned. Oh! Sorry. The two of them even developed a kind of language between themselves in which they use certain words from the vending machine as a yes and no. This allows for a certain kind of communication, but it's the best we're gonna get. So the girl further explains that she has a friend who deals with magical items like the vending machine, and therefore she might be able to help the vending machine figure out everything about itself. She even offers to take him to her, and the vending machine readily agrees. So without a second thought, Lemus carries the vending machine on her back. Holy frick, Lemus. While it might be over 500 kilograms, Lemus has the gift of strength from the gods, which allows her to do such extraordinary feats like this. After carrying the vending machine for quite the distance, the girl finally sits it down to take some rest. Once more, she's hungry, and the vending machine realizes that just corn soup isn't going to help her gain any more strength. So he decides to spend some of the points that he'd earned from her and spice up the contents of his vending. Is that the right word? I don't know. Instead of having a full stack of corn soup, he replaces some of them for some chips. While they're relatively expensive compared to the corn soup, Lemus still goes ahead and buys a ton. She's burning cash like fire burns sawdust. What? Eventually, she gets the vending machine to her village, and this whole area turns out to be a large dungeon. The village inside the dungeon is facilitating adventurers. The guards stop Lemus and ask her if she's okay since she'd been considered dead. She explains that she was in fact about to die if it wasn't for this fracking vending machine. She even offers the guys to use the vending machine if they want. My boy's getting rich! Anyways, since this place is a dungeon, anyone who finds something in the dungeon claims ownership to it, so technically the vending machine now belongs to Lemus. The soldiers ask her if she wants to sell it, but since she already had promised to take him to her friend, she refuses to sell him. She then carries the vending machine into the village to the closest inn, which belongs to one of her friends called Minami. Minami had been worried sick for her friend, and since he heard that the other hunters had left her for dead, she'd been really pissed at them and spread really bad names. The hunters would probably never be able to come back to the village again. Minami owns the inn, and since Lemus doesn't have any money to pay for the monthly traveling circle or whatever that is, she offers her a job at the inn. This delays their plans to head straight to Lemus's engineer friend, but the vending machine is in no hurry. In the daytime, he's stationed outside of the inn to gather people and attract them towards the end, while at night, he's taken to the gates of the village where he serves the soldier. Lemus takes great care of him and carries him to the gate every night and brings them back every morning. She even gives him a cool name, Boxo. Boxo. Every once in a while, when the people get tired of the same stuff, our hero Boxo changes up. I'm not gonna get used to this. He adds in different items so that the people are not tired of them. Recently, his udon have been very famous among the soldiers and the people of the city. In order to not hamper the business of the inn, he decides to stay outside at night and sell udon. And during the day, he would just attract the customers towards the inn. Beneficial relationship, waiting for the day when he can finally visit Lemus's friend. In the early morning, a bear-like creature appears in the market and notices the vending machine. Lemus introduces him to Boxo as the director of the Hunters Association. The director speaks about the ongoing battle with the frog fiends, and upon learning that Boxo can supply food, he considers it helpful for the battle, as they can obtain fresh food. He asks if they are interested in assisting them, and Lemus is skeptical and asks Boxo if he wants to help. Boxo knows that frog fiends are dangerous creatures from past experience. He doesn't want the village, especially Lemus, to get in trouble, so he agrees. They all leave for the battle along with other soldiers, and according to the director, the survival of the village is important, but the most crucial thing is to retain control of the transfer circle. The transfer circle is a magic device that enables people to travel between Clearflow, Lake Spectrum, and other locations. What the? I don't get the name either. While walking, the boys in the group discuss the money they will make in this war. However, they're all aware that this is a dangerous opponent that they're going up against, given the rainy season, and they have to deal with more adult frogs because of the rain. They're prepared for the dangers. The group of hunters is large enough to fight back. After a long walk, they finally reach their destination. Lemus has been carrying Boxo all along, and she finally sets the fricker down. A peculiar-looking guy approaches her. He is Kidiol, the captain of the troop. He cheekily tries to discuss the vending machine and its magical power. He mentions hearing a lot about it in the village, and Lemus explains to him that he has to insert money into it and buy food and drinks from it. He buys corn soup and enjoys it. He gets shocked when the vending machine talks and praises the packaging and quality of the food. He suspects Lamise's claim that it refills on its own. Their conversation is interrupted by Philomena, who comes to find the captain. He tells her about the vending machine's supposed magical power, but she remains unfazed. She maintains a straight face and just stares at the fricker. She detects and declares that there is no such magical power in it, as it's just a vending machine. However, the captain still refuses to believe it, pointing out that the machine dispenses and refills all by itself. Meanwhile, the director announces the decision to set up camp in that place. Boxo seizes the opportunity and refills the noodles in the machine. Everyone forms a line and joyfully eats the noodles, and they all seem to love cup noodles, which are new to them. While everyone is enjoying their meal, Boxo notices a girl with a greater appetite than she appears to have. Her name is Shui. Lamise also notices her. They have their little introductions, and later on, the director joins them to discuss the plans for the next day. The Frog Fiend's den is a 3-hour walk from their current location, so he asks if she wants to wait there or join them on the battlefield. She says that she's a hunter, so she has no problems joining in, but she asks for Boxo's opinion. Boxo agrees to join in as well. He feels responsible towards Lamise for some reason, as she was his first customer and also his first friend. The next foggy morning, they all set out towards the den. The weather is humid and the path is muddy. The director gives the command, and they all prepare to attack the frogs. The other warriors draw their swords and engage the frogs in battle, while the captain encourages them to do their best. Lamise asks Boxo to fight alongside her as she carries him. How? How do you expect a vending machine to be useful in a war like that? And then she just frickin' kicks a frog while having this vending machine on her back? Because apparently Boxo was giving her the balance that she lacked before. I know that your front is not nearly as heavy as your back right now. Philomena uses her magic to spray water towards the frogs, causing them to fall into the mud. Sensing the trouble, the captain orders everyone to team up, as it's difficult to defeat the frogs individually. The frogs gather together and launch an attack while the troops are ready to defend. When one of them attempts to attack Lamise, Shui shoots an arrow at it. However, it tries to attack again, but Boxo forms a protective wall around her, saving both her and Shui, who's behind her. The attack reflects back and the frog dissolves into the mud. Meanwhile, Shui is astonished by the light and asks if it's Lamise's power. Boxo realizes that he needs to widen his field of view for better protection. He sees it'll cost him 1,000 points to do that, but he agrees to pay the price. This allows him to see backwards as well, but he tells Lamise that he will signal her if any enemy tries to attack from behind. The captain is in front of them, praising Lamise for her bravery, but she just brushes it off. She's busy enjoying the captain's compliments and fails to understand the signal that Boxo gives, as there are many frogs attacking from behind. Boxo creates the blue protective wall again, causing the frogs to bounce backward. The captain becomes suspicious about the light, and Lamise reveals that it's Boxo's doing. He looks at Boxo with a disapproving expression for some reason. Why? He's saving your life! All the frogs are defeated and lie motionless. The captain orders the troops to cut the dead frogs' tongues out, and when they object, saying it's gross, he explains that this is why he's in charge, so he doesn't have to deal with the unpleasant tasks. Based! After a while, the captain insists on going to help the front line. Philomena, the vice captain, insists on staying there as they're in charge of Lamise and Boxo. However, he says they might earn more money if they go to the front line. Philomena states that she will only agree if Lamise consents to it, and upon hearing this, the captain tells Lamise not to worry too much, as it might give her wrinkles. That's your biggest concern? Lamise arrives, and the captain suggests that she might be happy to help. Hearing this, she agrees, acknowledging that things are going to get difficult here. They reach the front line and see all the wagons damaged. Lamise quickly starts carrying the wounded soldiers to the cart, and Boxo just feels fracking useless. Duh, you're a vending machine! But he does provide free sports drinks to each and every one of them, so that's something, I guess. Overhearing the conversation, Boxo realizes the name of the troops is the Menagerie of Fools. The manager explains that there are twice as many frogs as expected, possibly due to the increased chance of the King Fiend's arrival. He asks the captain to take care of the troops and Lamise to attend the wounded soldiers and provide food, to which she happily agrees. It's almost nighttime and everyone's taking some rest, and Lamise hears someone calling for help with the wounded soldiers, so she agrees to assist. However, she asks Boxo if he'll be okay alone. This makes Boxo realize that they would be a couple if he weren't a vending machine right now, as they're always together. While she's gone, a spooky guy approaches with a pin to open the vending machine. Boxo speaks, scaring him. He serves a free drink, and as the guy tries to take it, Boxo dispenses hot soup, causing him to get hurt. As he attempts to run away, he sees Lamise, and she punches him. She binds him with a rope and takes him to the cart, warning him not to cause any more trouble. They hear a king frog fiend approaching with fire all around it. They hastily try to pull the cart while the bulls are also frightened. Lamise frees the bulls and begins pulling the cart herself, and Boxo wants to help, but he just can't figure out how. He scrolls through the menu of supplies he can offer and provides just a frackin' cola. Then he transforms into a mint dispenser. However, he's still unsure of how to convey the plan to Lamise. The frog is getting closer and the situation becomes more intense. As the tension rises, and when the tired guy tries to talk it out, the wounded soldier stuffs the mint mints into his mouth and adds cola to shut him up. And all of you know what happens if you mix those mints into cola. Seeing this, Lemise understands the trick. It's the viral hack people did with Coke and mints back in the day. They put the mint in the cola bottle, causing the cola to burst out towards the frog, distracting it. The others attack the frog, and it's defeated. And never did I ever think that that would be used in an anime to defeat a boss. Lemise apologizes for her foolishness, and the director bows down to apologize for putting her in sad danger. Everyone starts returning to the village with a sense of pride. The group finally returns after finishing their battle with the frog monsters, or fiends as they like to call them. The entire crew is super happy about the outcome of the battle, but they're also tired and want to get back as soon as fracking possible. But as they reach near the village, they see a trail of smoke coming from the village itself, and the director is worried about what might have happened. Well, you need to go there to find out! I only say this because Lemise almost doesn't want to go there now, but Boxo encourages her to face the danger. The village is a fracking mess as they predicted. Pretty much every single house has been destroyed, and it looks like a massive trail of fracking dirt has been left behind. Almost like something had been dragged around the whole village, destroying one house after another. Lemise's attention quickly turns to the inn, and she's worried that her friend Munami and the innkeeper might have gotten hurt. So she rushes to where the inn is, and it's in the same state as the rest of the town. Even worse, if you ask me. You can imagine that Lemise is in quite the rush of emotions right now, and just so that she doesn't do anything rash, Boxer tells her to calm the frick down. After calming down a bit, Lemise realizes that since none of the villagers are anywhere to be seen, they must have all gathered in the Hunters Association. She runs to the place, and it turns out to be true. Her friends are still alive and well. Even the guards have actually managed to slay the monster. The monster that had destroyed the entire village turns out to be a two-headed snake monster, which is a natural enemy of the frog fiends. It's massive, it's scary, but it's also dead, so who the frick cares? Despite everything that had been transpired in the couple of days that have passed, none of the villagers had died in these events, all because of the standard defensive equipment of the village. Boxer looks around at all the people rejoicing in their victory and realizes that he has formed a great bond with all of them, despite him having been here only a few weeks, and he would do anything to save them all. That night, for the sake of it, he gives everyone free items. A certain beer and chips for the best seller of the day. I don't know what y'all do with that information, but have at it. The next day arrives and the reconstruction of the village has now begun. Lemise is more than looking forward to it. It's when her abilities actually shine. Earlier, everyone would consider her a nuisance, but then when there's work like heavy lifting to be done, there's no one better. Boxer's then visited by a strange woman who had come there after hearing that the stratum was low on silver coins and the entire economy was getting a bit too disturbed. Boxo shies away a bit. After all, he was the one who'd been hoarding all those silver coins, so this is bound to happen. The woman and her guard, however, do not want to take him to jail or anything. They simply want to exchange the silver coins for the gold coins that they have so that the economic balance is maintained. The gold coin idea is good, though. Each coin would be worth at least 100 silver coins, but the issue is that Boxo doesn't have an exchange feature yet, so the woman ends up spending the gold coins on cheap items to get silver coins as change. Business is truly booming for Boxo, but someone suspicious seems to be watching all this, which, looking at how slow this anime is going, we probably won't be talking about it anytime soon. A few days later, the village director invites Boxo to his office to have a serious discussion. He explains how the hazards of disease between man and woman have been growing ever since the whole reconstruction thing had been going on. He wants to know if there is a solution that Boxo could offer, and my guy can do just that. He transforms into a new device, his mechanical heart beating as if he was a teenager about to do something highly sus. Surely, the director's assistant is also there, but he's a bit too nervous about it. He dispenses a sticky, slimy balloon, if you know what I mean, which labels with instructions with the director and Shirley are very professional about it all. Holy frick, he can dispense con! They even buy a ton of this stuff from him. By the time he's out of the office, he's fracking rich and also kind of hot and beating. Doesn't make sense for a machine though now, does it? Over the next few days, Boxer has a ton of work in the village doing all kinds of stuff that he would have enjoyed doing if he was actually a fracking human being. He's stationed in the spa house of the village, the women's spa house to be precise, but unluckily for him, he's still just a vending machine. He tries to explain that he was pretty much forced to come here since he has to sell some shampoo, but we all know why you agreed to come here in the first place. You can sell shampoo outside the spa as well. Why do you gotta do it in here? A few days passed since then, and he's already tasked by the director for a special mission. He explains that for the past few days, a few crimes have been happening in and around the Hunters Association and asks Boxo to investigate using his invisibility function, because a vending machine can just do this. Boxo agrees and stumbles upon Lames and Suri arguing amongst themselves. Shorty wants to buy Boxo from the Misu, insists that she doesn't even own him in the first place. My man has got more pull than me, and he's a vending machine! Frick, man! Not at all surprising. Early in the morning, Boxo's confronted by a group of guys who explain to him that the director Bear had told him to transport him to a nearby fort. They tell him that he needs to be there and help out the soldiers with some supplies. A completely plausible cost to move a vending machine from one place to another. But there were a few signs of suspicion suspicion. Mainly that the driver of the cart to which was supposed to carry him away was the same guy who tried to steal stuff from him during the fighting campaign. Regardless of this, Boxo decides to be the better man, or vending machine, and believes that perhaps the guy had changed and taken up a life of doing good, and he agrees to go with them on this little expedition. That whole thing was at least like 8 hours ago, and now Boxo's in the middle of fracking who knows where. The whole place seems to be a little deserted land filled with actual animals like deers.
What's wrong with deers?
Boxo just gets distracted by the little things, but I'm absolutely certain that he has been abducted. It's too late by the time he realizes this, but he does learn the fact that he should not trust people to become better just by the fact that he beat them earlier. He knows that he's in trouble and looks at the amount of points that he has. Unfortunately for him, he only has enough points to create a barrier for 3 hours, and that's not gonna be enough time to save him from all these evil people. The cart then suddenly stops, and all the bad guys who had abducted him confront the fricker. They're after the money stash that he had managed to exchange with the dungeon officials in the last episode. As they surround him, Boxo manages to use the cameras on him to capture the pictures of all his captors. Googoyle, the crook who has encountered Boxo for 3 fracking episodes now, comes up to him and demands the money. He explains he's not going to be easy on him anymore. Boxo, however, isn't in the mood to negotiate either. He straight up tells him to get lost. Well, with the words that he can conjure up, Googoyle starts punching him and even creates a dent in him. The leader of the crooks, however, tells the man to stop. He warns him that they need Boxo in good shape. They can't afford to lose such a valuable asset. Googoyle, however, reminds the leader that Boxo can automatically repair itself. He explains how he had seen the machine repair itself during the campaign against the frog monsters. Hearing this, the leader goes to Boxo himself and reveals how dire of a situation the machine is in. The man gently warns Boxo to give up and give them the money. And once again, Boxo straight up refuses. So the leader tells the crooks to start smacking the frick out of the vending machine. Googoyle and his friends happily agree and start kicking the machine and hitting it with swords and hammers and everything. Boxo's a vending machine and he can't really do much.
That's the most obvious thing you've ever said.
He has no idea what he can do as he's losing a lot of durability when he suddenly realizes that he can actually level up in durability. He uses 1,000 points to increase his dexterity and durability, and suddenly all the attacks that the crooks are attempting on him are fucking pointless. They don't even cause him to lose a single point. And the crooks are confused too. They think they might be in trouble, especially Googoyle, since Boxo hasn't repaired himself yet. The leader, however, lets it be for now and stops them. Late into the night, the crooks get the vending machine to an abandoned mansion in the middle of a forest. It looks like the leader is planning to do something with Boxo, but he just can't be sure quite yet. Googoyle and his men then take Boxo to one of the rooms in the castle, and they seem to be troubled and scared to enter the room, but they get in nonetheless. Who cares, right? It's just fear. They place the vending machine on the floor and demand that it be checked upon as for the request of their leader. Suddenly they hear the voice of a woman who seems very pissed that they would try and force work upon her. She just hates the crooks' guts and takes every opportunity to make them feel bad about their sad lives. The hooligans rush away, biting their tongue in anger. They'll be back. The girl and the vending machine are then finally introduced to each other, a sentence I never thought I would ever say. The crooks had left her with a manual regarding all the words the vending machine could speak, so she found it easy to communicate with them. Her name is Holmi. Yes, she's the woman that Llamas had been talking about. Holmi is a researcher who's been researching stuff.
Never mind. That's the most obvious thing you've ever said.
Stuff like putting the soul of a human into a machine, and that's pretty much it. That's also what Boxo is. Wow, what a coincidence. The two of them get to talking, and using just yes or no questions, Homie manages to get a lot of information out of Boxo. Our vending machine hero also shows her a couple of their tricks, like the barrier and how he can transform from one shape into another and even change his items. Homie is more than fascinated, and she wants to study him even more now. It looks like it's gonna take some time for her to actually complete her research on exactly how Boxo got stuck into being a vending machine. That night, as the researcher's fast asleep, Googoyle and his crooks appear in the room as well. Apparently, they had not taken her insults earlier very positively, and therefore they were gonna teach her a lesson. Boxo, being a vending machine, can't really fight off these guys, so he decides to take care of them some other way. As they approach the researcher, he transforms, causing a massive light, attracting their attention. The vending machine had actually changed into a vending machine. But instead of food, he's giving out lewd magazines. The crooks are fracking brain dead and are instantly attracted towards them like a moth to a flame. As soon as they get their hands on the magazines, all of them decide to head to the bathroom. That actually worked.
Freaking did.
The next day arrives, and Homie wants to continue her research on Boxo, but the leader of the crooks enters the room and warns her that he needs her to find an answer about the vending machine as fast as she can. He's not concerned about the soul or magic or any of that other frickin' junk. He wants to know how he can get the gold coins out of the machine, and that's it. The leader gives her a 2-day ultimatum. It's either get the gold or die. So Homie and Boxo get to work. With the limited amount of words that he has in his dictionary, Boxo tries to help her as much as he possibly can, and yet the 2-day frickery just seems way too short. There's just too much to discuss in too little time. A day and a half had already passed, and our hero had already realized that there's no way they can find an answer in the limited amount of time that they have. So Boxo devised a plan to create a distraction so that Homie could escape unharmed. However, she was a step ahead of him. She'd already realized that Boxo would make such a plan and tells him that he should not worry about her. Even though she might be able to escape this whole ordeal alone because of his sacrifice, her weak body would not be able to survive the monstrous creatures out in the wild. Their only possible way to get out of this would be together. Alright guys, it's been 2 days. Do we have an answer? Well, it doesn't matter because something else is happening outside. Boxo hears a lot of commotion and shaking going on and wakes up Homie. They can even hear the voice of Lamis calling out for our hero, and it looks like the director of the Hunters Association had finally caught up with them and were there to save him. The only issue was all this fighting could maybe cause an explosion. How, you ask?
I didn't ask.
Homie explains that above them was a chamber full of explosives, which is also where the crooks hid all their gold. Now, why would they hide their gold in a room full of explosives? Seconds later, the whole place explodes and the roof falls on top of them. Of course, alright, yeah. Thankfully, Boxo manages to pull up a barrier to save Homie and himself. The only problem is he can't put up the barrier for a long time. It might take a day or even a couple of days for the people outside to remove the rubble and save them. He can't maintain the barrier for that long. Just then, they notice the massive bag of gold that the crooks had gathered, and Homie uses all of it, which Boxo managed to slide into his barrier to buy a ton of stuff from the vending machine. This gave him a lot of points, which would allow him to maintain the barrier for quite a while. Once all the shopping was done, though, Homie falls to the floor, her head aching. The air was getting thin, and she was losing her oxygen. If he didn't do something, she would soon die. Luckily, he's an overpowered vending machine that can summon literally fracking anything, so he changes into a vending machine that gives out oxygen masks. Now, I don't know why the writer included this thing, maybe because he thought people wouldn't realize that there was actually a vending machine that gave out oxygen masks in the 1970s or something. He's trying to make this whole thing seem a bit more realistic, but then how can you be this realistic when it's a man reincarnated as a fracking vending machine? You don't need facts to justify yourself here, bro. I'm forced to go along with it anyway.
Ha! Yeah.
It ain't gonna stop me from questioning everything, though.
Unfortunately.
Lamis often dreams of a strange land in her past, and she's been dreaming for an awfully long time right now. Apparently, in order to save Boxo, she'd spent tons of restless nights trying to locate him, and therefore sleeping right now isn't that big of an issue.
Must be nice.
What is an issue is her backstory, which, like any other hero, is very tragic. Homie explains that she and Lamis used to be friends from their childhoods. When they were very small, a tragic accident happened that caused the destruction of their entire village. Both of them had lost their parents in that accident, and although they could have done something since Lamis had already gained her powers, she had been too scared to do anything about it. She was a child. Ever since that day, she'd blamed herself, but it wasn't like she ever had the ability to control her powers to begin with. She couldn't even bring herself to kill a fly. However, all these years later, she was a hunter now, and after hearing said tragic backstory, Boxo promises himself that whatever he does, he will always be by Lamis' side and help her. We're back in the village now, and Homie has decided to stay in the village and research further on Boxo for the time being. The villagers are kind enough to give her a little tent next to the inn where she and Boxo are now living. After Lamis bids her farewell, the two of them notice strange suited men lurking nearby, and Boxo immediately recognizes them to be the bodyguards of Suori because of the system, I guess. I don't know. It's the little girl who's always been bullying Boxo, but she kind of has a good heart and he kind of likes her, so okay. The two bodyguards enter the tent and immediately request a massive favor from both Homie and Boxo. They don't really have the time to discuss the entire details, but all they ask is for them to accept the proposal that Suori was coming to them with. They explain that it's a matter of great pride for their house, but before they could say anything else, Suori herself arrives and they fracking hide. Now, while the bodyguards from earlier were making it sound like it was something so dramatic, it turns out the whole thing wasn't that deep after all. Suori explains that every once in a while, the merchants from the dungeons put up a convention in which various merchants display their magic item engineers and the items that they had created. This is the reason why she'd been wanting to acquire Boxo for such a long while, so that she could flex on her merchant friends. However, this convention was of special interest to her in particular. It turns out the convention was being hosted by her mortal enemy and rival, Kanashi, and it was very important that she could flex in front of Kanashi at the very least. So she begs for them to at least act like her engineer and item. Despite this being a very demeaning proposal, Boxo and Homie actually agree, considering it to be an exciting opportunity to meet various merchants. The convention is actually pretty top-notch. It's every kind of merchant from different ends of the dungeon coming in. Kanashi seems pretty confident that her item and engineer would be the winner of this convention. The contestants finally start pouring in, and they have all sorts of items that they have made this year. My personal favorite is the stick. This guy made a stick, which he claims to be every single weapon in the world. How, you ask? He just puts in the metal part of the weapon on top of the stick. Apparently no one else thinks it's genius. Frickin', I'm the only smart one in my life. So basically, every other invention is pretty lame, and almost all the audience falls asleep. But then it's time for Kanashi's engineer. The man finally steps out of the shadows with his invention, which looks like C-3PO from Star Wars, but the female version. The engineer claims that he found out a way to engineer a magical item with its own thoughts. Homie pauses in fear and reminds Boxo of the world's current scientific developments. According to her, no one had ever developed a magic item with its own consciousness. So this meant that either this engineer was a pioneer of new scientific art, or he was lying, and this is just a machine with a human soul trapped in it. This would not be an issue, but the only problem is trapping human soul inside a machine only makes it more chaotic. She remembers a time when a stupid engineer had done a similar thing and exploded an entire town. Despite this, at first, the robot that Kanashi's engineer had made seems to be functioning perfectly. The entire audience is amused and overjoyed to see such an incredible invention, but suddenly it starts to malfunction. The robot starts shouting racial slurs at the audience. So, someone shut it down! Shut it down! Nah, I'm kidding. It starts to wander around claiming to kill people. So yeah, that's not much better. It seems puzzled. It doesn't know how it got inside a robot. This is enough to confirm Homie's suspicion. The robot had a human soul in it. If it wasn't dealt with soon, it would cause like very much havoc. As the robot starts going rogue, she quickly turns to Swarty's bodyguards and tells them to subdue the fricker. The bodyguards can't do a lot, but manage to create a long enough diversion for Homie to break the barrier stone, which locks that human soul inside the robot, freeing it once and for all. This grabs everyone's attention, and they recognize Homie. Since she was a pretty famous researcher during her young age and pretty unorthodox at that, the entire party's attention turns towards her, and the convention ends as such. What, no thank you? Winter finally arrives in the town, and it looks like a dark, sinister group of people are having a very serious meeting about death and destruction. However, we don't need to worry. This is kind of like a slice of life anime, and it's just the innkeepers who've been discussing their mortal enemy appearing in their town. Chain restaurants. Oh, frick. KFC, McDonald's, the bane of everyone's existence. They have now planned to create their own branch in their town, which will possibly or more likely lead to the inn's bankruptcy. They have gathered so that they can come up with a plan to deal with and get rid of these accursed fast food chain restaurants, and for what they have asked is Boxo's help. Why? Well, Boxo doesn't really want to play any favorites here and wants to have a balance in the market. The innkeeper lady offers to give Homie and Lami's 50% off of any purchase and staying at the inns, which makes him agree quite readily, actually. Dang, only 50%? Not for free? Bro, this dude should have haggled. Anyways, it doesn't even take the chain restaurants a couple of days to start their restaurant at the town, and the owner even tries to get Boxo to join their cause. Boxo, however, is a man of his word, or a box. Vending machine of his word. He's helping out the innkeepers. First, Lamis and Homie try out the food from the chain restaurant, which is just frackin' bland, as it always is. It makes sense because chain restaurants are able to create a large amount of food for a large number of people, but they can't maintain their consistent taste, which is the factor that Boxo plans to use to help out the other innkeepers. Later, in the second sinister meeting of the innkeepers, they decide to hash out a really unique menu for the customers in order to lure them away from the chain restaurants. This menu is tested by Lamis and Homie, and based on their suggestions, Boxo hands them ingredients which they can use to create their new menu. The next day, the inns open up with a brand new menu, and slowly but surely, all the customers are going to the local inns rather than the chain restaurant. Eventually, nobody wants to go to the chain restaurants, and within a couple of days of opening up in town, they go frickin' bankrupt, shut down, and head out. That was easy. The next day, as Boxo, Lamis, and Homie are heading somewhere, they're approached by the leader of the Menagerie of Thieves, who wants the Boxo to come with them on their next campaign. Boxo has absolutely zero intentions to go, but if Lamis, who is also invited to the campaign, is willing to go, then he would accompany her. Lamis seems to be in two minds about it, though. She wants to be strong enough to take her revenge out, but she also just doesn't want to frackin' leave. Boxo and Homie assure her that whatever happens, they will be by her side. I'm guessing it looks like she's gonna head for the campaign.
Looks like the winter's finally coming to an end, and Boxo hasn't really forgotten the sad backstory that Homie and Lamis had gone through. He promises to himself that he'll always come to her aid and will never allow her to suffer as long as he's there. And then what's this? Another female? I didn't think that a harem protag would be a frackin' vending machine. 2023 really do be inclusive, bro. Girl isn't here for Boxo, though. She seems to be eyeing the guard Gorm, who often comes to Boxo to buy hot udon every night. Both Grom and the girl are obviously in love with each other, but they just need that extra push. One night when the girl arrives to see Grom once more and is unable to talk to him out of sheer shyness, Boxo decides to help her out. He changes his form multiple times, making sure that she can get all the items required to create hot udon, and just like that, the
love story begins. Trust me, this is actually essential to the story of this episode. So spring finally arrives, and Lamis and Bakso are ready to take on the hunter season with the menagerie of fools. Lamis wanted to prove herself, and Bakso was going to help her throughout this journey. Lamis carries them to the gate where the menagerie of fools are ready to set out on their journey. Their target this season were the crocodile fiends. Apparently, after defeating the king of the frog fiends and also a massive snake for some reason, the population of the crocodile fiends had grown exponentially, which made them a much bigger threat than before. The menagerie of fools have been hired to gather information about the crocodile fiends and their growth in the dungeon floor. The bear director also hired Homie as part of the group, just so that they could have a reliable source of information that was present among the hunters. So their journey begins with Lamis and Bakso walking alongside the carriage that carries the entire crew of the fools. As they travel towards the lair of the crocodile fiends, they're attacked by a group of frog fiends once more. I was of the assumption that these creatures were all dead, but apparently they still exist. We also get to find out that Lamis's aim is still very much sucking. She can't even hit one monster with her fist or with an item in her hand. Anyways, by the end of the day, the group reaches near the location of the crocodile fiends and decides to set up camp. Bakso transforms himself into some kind of different vending machine that gives away essential items. He even gives them tarps and portable toilets, which is kind of cool, I guess. The leader of the fools tries to take credit for all this, but we all know who's the real deal here. Imagine getting out-clouted by a vending machine.
Not hard to imagine when it's happening right in front of me.
The task of the hunting then finally begins, and since this is just a reconnaissance mission, the leader sends out 2 of his scouts to check out the group of crocodile fiends nearby. Later that day, the scouts return and explain that there are about 30 crocodile fiends in a marsh nearby. Homie explains that this is just a typical size for a group of crocodile fiends. It doesn't look like anything out of the order. And well, that was the end of the mission, but the menagerie of hunters get kinda greedy. Since killing the crocodile fiends and getting their skin would allow them to gather a lot more money, they decide to plan an attack and kill the monsters despite the initial plan. The leader wants to go in and launch a surprise attack in the night, but Homie reminds them the crocodile fiends are actually nocturnal and therefore more vigilant and sharper during the night. So they settle on a plan to go attack the following morning. The following morning, the group gathers around at the river that leads up to the marsh where the crocodile fiends are. In order to draw out the crocodile fiends in the marsh, they decide to use ice. This was all a part of Bakso's ideas. He himself transformed into an ice machine. He turned himself into an ice machine that dispenses tons of ice into the river, making the marsh super cold and drawing out the crocodiles from the water onto land where they're weaker. Okay, well that was actually kind of smart, but I didn't know he could do that. The leader wanted his subordinates to use magic and create a massive fog so that they could attack in the fog, but nobody has enough magical powers to create such a large amount. This is once again where Bakso comes in handy and transforms into a dry ice dispenser, filling the water with dry ice this time. Yeah, sure, just kill them. This creates a massive amount of fog and the perfect opportunity for them to attack. Only Homie and Bakso are left behind by the river as the rest go to attack the monsters. Homie then reveals her actual motives for coming out of this expedition. She explains that the bear director had hired her because he was a little concerned about the appearance of a lord. A lord is actually a boss battle, a monster that appears in a dungeon every once in a while. There were no real indications of when the monster would appear except the fact that it would appear once in a decade or so. So this time, all of these abnormalities like the sudden rise in population of crocodile bears and the drop in population of frog fiends were certain indicators that could possibly show that a lord was about to spawn. Speaking of which, a lord did actually spawn. A crocodile fiend lord is about to attack the ground. It looks like Lamis is already hurt in the battle as the menagerie of fools are racing away being chased by said lord. Homie notices that the lord even has spatial destruction fracking abilities and every step is destroying the floor behind it. They race towards them now and the leader tells Homie to jump into the cart. Homie's reluctant to leave Bakso behind, but the vending machine quickly creates a barrier around himself and pushes Homie into the cart because that's just the best thing to do. With the cart racing away, the lord turns his attention towards Bakso, and despite him having a barrier around him and even increasing his stats by quite a bit, the lord throws him away into the distance. In just a single hit, Bakso loses at least 1,000 points. If he had not put up a barrier, he would actually be dead right now. The lord approaches him once again, and this time he converts himself into a fried chicken dispensing machine. When in doubt, just turn into a frackin' Kentucky Fried Chicken. Yes! He was wanting to distract the fricker until help could arrive. He dispenses tons of fried chicken like an underpaid employee. But even though at first the lord attacks the chicken, it quickly turns back to the vending machine and swallows it whole. Bakso finds himself inside the stomach of the lord and his points are decreasing at a rapid rate. He doesn't have much time, but he does have a plan at first. So he turns himself into an acid dispensing machine. Not acid like the killer acid, but acid tablets. He dispenses those tablets into the stomach, creating a large amount of gas, and then also turns himself into a gas machine, dispensing a lot of gas into the lord's stomach. This is disgusting. Now remember how Bakso can cook hot udon inside himself? He plans to cook a steel can inside his internal oven. Now, kids, don't try this at home, but if you put a steel item inside an oven, it creates fire. More specifically, an explosion. And that's exactly what he uses to blow up the stomach of the Lord. Thankfully, he survives, but the same cannot be said about this poor crocodile fricker. All that remains of the poor guy is its bones. Just as Boxo opens up his barrier, a strange crocodile coin lands on his body, and before he knows it, the entire floor around him starts to collapse, and he falls into a massive cavern.
As he's falling into the cavern below, Boxo's first trail of thought is to remember that Lamis was injured and wonders if she's okay by now.
His second thought is that he's falling down at a rapid pace and he's about to die. So Boxo quickly transforms into a balloon dispensing machine and starts to send out as many balloons as he can into the barrier in hopes that he can do something like the movie and save his life.
The movie? What movie?
However, at the rate at which he's falling is exponentially higher than the rate at which he's producing the balloon, so he spends like fracking 10,000 points to increase his speed by 10.
Soon the barrier is now filled with hydrogen balloons, but the speed at which he's falling is still incredibly high.
Y'all, we know he's the protagonist of this clearly slice of life anime. He's not gonna die just yet. But it would be incredibly funny if he just fell to the floor, crushed himself, and died, and the anime just ended right there. But unfortunately for us, he has a plan. Boxo transforms himself into a cardboard machine, which I didn't even know existed, and since cardboard is basically paper, he's light enough so that he can land safely and slowly. As the dust from the floor eruption earlier clears off, Boxo realizes that he's falling into what looks like a massive maze of some sort. He gets panicked at first, but quickly remembers that Homie once told him that the whole dungeon was formed on top of a massive maze. Clicks a couple of pictures just to make sure that he has records of everything, I guess. He lands in the middle of this maze and the crocodile coin falls right before him. He wonders what kind of great items he might be able to unlock with that crocodile coin, but unfortunately for him, he doesn't have any hands, so he can't pick it up. He decides to look at his points to see if he can add any new features into himself, and that's when he realizes that he has over 1 million points. That was probably because he defeated the level boss all by himself. Using those million points, Boxo decides to level himself up and becomes a level 2 vending machine. This allows him to be able to transform into different machines. It just doesn't need to be classified as a vending machine like earlier. So he transforms into a vacuum machine, which I don't know what it is, but it's a machine, and using that, he manages to suck up the crocodile coin back into his system. Unfortunately, he had wasted so much of his efforts only to realize that the crocodile coin just tells him that he defeated a crocodile dungeon boss and nothing else. Not to mention, he also runs out of his 2-hour transformation time limit and has to revert back to his old form. Leveling up, however, comes with its own perks because now Boxo doesn't really have to rely on customers to come and buy from him to get points. He has now installed solar panels on top of himself that allows him to generate points that keep him alive. On a warm, sunny day like this, he just doesn't want to deal with people at all. Laying down in the sun and gaining points is actually a better thing to do, and you know what? I can relate to that. Suddenly, he notices a group of bears that look like cats running away from a group of ogres coming right towards him. The group of bear cats look really weak and vulnerable compared to the massive ogres that are chasing them, and Boxo decides to help them out. As the bear cats pass them, he shoots out hard bottles of I don't really know what that is at ogres and chases them away, saving the prickers. He then finally reveals himself to the bear cats in hopes that they would accompany him or perhaps take him to safety somehow. At first, the bear cats are really wary of the strange item lying in the middle of a maze, so Boxer comes up with the perfect strategy to lure them to his side. Food! He bribes them with fried chicken, and at first they're really wary, and the leader doesn't really want them to trust food from a stranger, but no one can deny good fried chicken. At the end of the day, the bear cats end up buying tons of food from Boxo. As they eat lunch, Boxo gets to learn a lot about them. Apparently, they were a group of hunters called the Voracious Devils. And well, we pretty much figured that one out, considering they ate almost everything from the vending machine. These hunters were searching for treasures and money because apparently they were running low on funds. I wonder why. They were planning to travel deep into the dungeon to find some great treasure, but now that they had found the vending machine, they planned to return back to the entrance. The group plans to sell the vending machine at some chain restaurants. Considering it's a magic item, they believe they're going to earn a lot of money from. As you can imagine, Boxo really doesn't want this to happen. He doesn't want to get sold, and especially doesn't want to get sold to a chain restaurant since he pretty much bankrupted one of them earlier. So he tries his very best to show the bear cats that he's in fact conscious and has a mind of his own. But since he can only use a certain amount of phrases and the fact that the bear cats aren't really that smart to begin with, he can't really prove it to them. Despite this, he does save the bear cats again and again and again from various troubles. Then the ogres from earlier return to exact revenge on them, or maybe eat them. Well, that would be revenge, kind of. During this battle, Boxo turns into a petroleum dispensing machine. He manages to give the ogres a sip, only for a massive burning skeleton to appear out of actually nowhere. The group somehow somehow manages to escape this whole ordeal as the skeleton monster turns its attention towards the fired ogres, who I'd assume taste like pork. At night, the hunters group is so sound asleep that they don't even realize that a group of flaming skulls, aka the minion of the boss Flaming Skeleton, have crept up on them. Boxo not only wakes the Bearcats up, but he also transforms the items in his storage into water, which the hunters use to defeat the flying flaming skulls. Seriously, these Bearcats are so stupid they were asking around what's the weakness of fire. Who gave you a license to become hunters? So with Boxo's immense help, the voracious devils somehow managed to survive the 2 days in the maze and eventually come across Lamise once more. Turns out that Lamise and the entire menagerie of fools were actually looking for Boxo. Even the bear director was here and he knows the voracious devils pretty well. So in the end, everything is settled up. The devils are actually pretty embarrassed to realize that Boxo was actually a conscious being. Well, in my honest opinion, they should be embarrassed that they even call themselves hunters. Learn how fire works, you frickin' ding-dongs! The first objective of the bear director and the menagerie of fools was to get Boxo back, but it seems like they have other business in this maze dungeon as well. The bear director explains that after rescuing him, they were planning to go after the boss of this dungeon level, the Flame Skeleton. He explains that it was not his personal wish, but the wish of the menagerie of fools to carry out this mission, and therefore the leader of the fools explained why they needed to do this. The man himself then steps ahead and explains that each member of the fools have their own objectives. So far, they've been going along like a group so they could have all those objectives fulfilled. He further explains that at the bottom level of all the dungeons lies a secret that allows anyone to have their wishes granted. Well, people far and wide have already reached the final level. They've never been able to find the way to get their wishes granted. They believe that in order to get that wish fulfilled, they would need some special coins that are only dropped when the bosses of each level are destroyed. So the coin that Boxo had received earlier when the crocodile monster had died would allow him to get one wish granted once he reaches the final level. The fools have been going around and hunting expeditions in places that were spawning such monster bosses. There were 8 members of said fools. The twins had a single wish, and the vice captain and the captain of the group also had a single wish. Therefore, the entire group needed 6 coins in order to fulfill all their wishes. And so far, they had 3. He inquires if Boxo had gained a coin earlier when he defeated the crocodile boss, and when he concurs, the captain cheerfully encourages Boxo to join the menagerie. He explains that with their combined efforts, they could gain enough coins for them to fulfill all their wishes. Considering the fact that there was a human soul stuck inside of Boxo, he'd probably want to come out, and that coin would be very helpful in doing just that. Boxo's a little conflicted about becoming a human again, but he does want to help the fools. So when Lamise agrees to become part of the group, he gets in on the action as well. With that finally out of the way, the group heads back inside the maze dungeon. The bear director had brought with himself a map with which he tries to explain the directions to the group. However, Boxo notices that there are some discrepancies in the map in the actual maze itself. He had a few pictures from earlier, and now that he was a level 2 vending machine, he manages to acquire a monitor through which he can display the pictures. This turns out to be a massive help because now they can update their map and they won't get lost during their journey. The plan was simple. They wanted to trap the flame skeleton inside a massive hole in the dungeon itself and then kill it by dropping stones and whatever it attacks they can. The massive hole itself is an existing hole trap in the maze that only opens up when a heavy enough object lands on top of it. However, the director knows of such a button that'll open the hole manually. All they had to do was lure the flame skeleton into the location of the trap and just open the door. They plan to fill up the hole with water so that when the skeleton drops in the hole, it'll be extinguished, therefore making it easier to kill. The director shows them the whole trap, and they plan to fill up the whole thing using the water from Boxo and some magic from the vice captain of the fools. Boxo, however, can only transform into a different kind of vending machine fracking 2 hours per day. Therefore, the plan is a little bit more delayed. At the end of 3 days, one of the bear cats from earlier decides to go into the hole to check out if it's filled with the right amount. Turns out the hole has a really good drainage system, and the water they've been pouring into the hole is all gone. As you can imagine, everyone's quite disappointed, but not Boxo actually. He quickly comes up with a plan and starts dropping ice in instead of water. Since the hole is pretty deep, it's probably cool enough to keep the ice as is, and hopefully it'll be enough to take down the flame skeleton when the time comes. So for the next few days, Boxo continues pouring ice into the massive cavern. One night as he returns back to his original form, Lamise comes to him wondering if he's been thinking about what the menagerie of fools had told him. She'd found out a pretty unique thing about the vending machine. Whenever he's thinking, the lights flicker, which is actually a really interesting thing. You can never be freaking, never mind. Anyways, she asks him if he was thinking about the whole turning back into a human thing, and honestly, that's pretty much exactly what he's thinking about. Boxo's a little self-conscious about turning back into a human. He wonders sometimes that if he becomes a human once more, he'll lose all the value that he has. And sure, his friends would be happy that he became human at first, but then when they realize that he's a good for nothing, they'd probably just wish for him to revert back to a vending machine, which is sad, really. But then again, whenever he looks at Lamisa and she smiles at him, he wonders if having that company is just enough for him. So he replies to Lamisa in his very little vocabulary that he's unsure about the whole decision. Lamisa tells him that she'd love for him to turn back into a human so that they could spend time together as normal people, and maybe she could show him her cooking. Well, that's enough romantic stuff for now. Let's get back into the battle! So finally, the day of the battle against the flaming skeleton arrives, and the group manages to lure the flaming skeleton towards them and quite brilliantly manage to throw him into the trap. Well, actually, it wasn't that brilliant, but anyways. Once the flaming skeleton drops into the hole, everybody steps away expecting a massive eruption of steam, considering the ice would melt and all that stuff. However, no steam comes up, and upon inspection, it looks like the flame from the skeleton was extinguished. Turns out that the entire time, everybody was thinking that Boxo was putting in ice into the hole. He was actually putting in dry ice. When dry ice melts, well, actually dry ice in itself is carbon dioxide, but when it melts, it emits carbon dioxide, and since it's heavier than oxygen, it lays on the pit. Without oxygen, fire can't start. Are you following?
Am I supposed to be?
Realizing that the flames had finally been extinguished, the group starts pelting the monster with stones, rocks, and whatever they can fracking find, and yet they can't really do as much damage as they've been wanting to. In order to make a better impact, they would require to strike the monster with a heavy object, and the only heavy object around is, you guessed it, Boxo. The menagerie of fools even think of throwing him, but Lamisa and Homie are strictly against the idea, so they decide that they should go down themselves to the hole and start striking the monster with better weapons. The only problem is the pit is filled with carbon dioxide, so they'll all die. Boxer tries to warn them all, but in his panic, he can't really muster up a sensible response. So when his friends are finally about to head into the hole, he transforms into a lewd magazine selling machine, and this startles Lamisa, who strikes him and throws him up in the air. He then transforms into a massive vending machine, which falls into the pit, strikes the skeleton monster, and kills it right then and there. Well, that somehow worked. Once again, Lamisa tries to come down to save him, but this time he warns her properly. He then sucks up the coin that he gained, turns into a balloon dispenser, and then a cardboard vending machine, and makes his way back up to the surface like nothing even happened. Well, something eventually did happen. He had killed yet another dungeon boss and had gained another super coin. When the captain of the menagerie of the fools asks him for the coin, he simply gives it to him, but Homie stops him and distracts. She explains that the coin belongs to Boxo since he was the one who defeated the monster. So the captain does the right thing and decides to buy the coin from Boxo for 100 gold coins. This is more than enough money for him to get 100,000 points, and there was no way in frickery Boxo was not going to sell the coin. I mean, after all, he already had the coin from the other dungeon boss, so he didn't really need another one. So a deal is struck, and just like that, the jolly day comes to a merry end.
Ho ho, mother fricker.